Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Spencer Erickson and I am a chiropractor here at Timpview Chiropractic. Now, I wanted to make this video because I keep hearing over and over this phrase, I don't believe in chiropractic. So this video is kind of for you skeptics out there, as well as just to bring general awareness about what chiropractic is. Now, speaking of skepticism, I was just as big a skeptic as anybody out there, but now I understand what chiropractic actually is, and I want to help you understand too. So let's just get right in and figure this thing out. Now, for years, medical doctors and other professionals have been under the impression that what we do is basically akin to faith healing, and it's largely a placebo effect. Now, to be fair, until the last 25 or 30 years, there hasn't really been a lot of scientific research on why chiropractic actually works. But that's not true anymore. We have tons of research now. Now, maybe you're aware of this already, but the foundational principle of chiropractic is something that we call a subluxation. The easiest definition of a subluxation is a misalignment and fixation within the spine. And usually there's some component, something additional included about how it adversely affects the nervous system. Now, I have a background in anatomy, so it never really seemed far-fetched to me that a bone in the spine might be moved out of place and get stuck out of place. I've actually felt that in my own back before, in my own neck before. And that's the mechanical part of a subluxation. Now, what we need to do is we need to clear up the neurological component of a subluxation. For years, we've suffered from the idea of a subluxation, that a subluxation is unverified and it's unscientific. And up to this point, chiropractors have taught that a subluxation puts pressure on nerves, which chokes off the nerve supply to our organs, just like a garden hose that gets pinched off to a tomato plant, and that causes the tomato plant to dry out and wither. Now, while that model is mechanically possible and it is really easy to explain, that's not really the most accurate description of the neurological effects of subluxations. So let's tap into some other things you already know. First of all, each of us has a master controller for our body that keeps us alive and healthy, and it controls everything. It controls our heart and lungs and liver and immune system and our kidneys and every other tissue and cell in our body. It also houses all of your thoughts and feelings and emotions and your beliefs and your consciousness and your personality. And you already know that that's your brain. That's your nervous system. We all learned that in science class. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If your nervous system controls everything, how does it know what's going on around you and inside your body? Now, people are often really confused by this question, but it's not a trick question. Once I say the answer, it's really obvious. Your brain gets all of its information through your senses, through your sensory system. Now, without your senses, your brain would just be a big lump of tissue between your ears. It doesn't know anything until it experiences it through your senses. I hope that makes sense. Now, Let's review the senses. First of all, we have sight and hearing and touch and taste and smell, right? Those are the five that we typically think of. But actually, if you get really technical, we have over 30 different senses. But there are two that I really want to draw your attention to. The first is balance sense, and the second is movement sense. And we're just really going to focus on movement sense. Senses work through your nerves. Now, it's estimated that your body is sending approximately 3 billion signals per second up to your brain through your spinal cord. Those are all sensory nerves. And about half of those sensory signals are movement signals, movement sense. That means your brain is being constantly inundated in movement signals from your body. Now, why would your body be sending that much information to your brain? Well, it turns out that your brain needs all of these signals to power itself and to maintain its energy level. Back in 1981, there was a brain researcher by the name of Roger Sperry, and he actually won the Nobel Prize for his work in this movement sense. He made the analogy that movement in the body, and specifically in the spine, generates power for the brain, just like a windmill creates power for a power plant. Now, that's one reason why when you provide movement through physical activity and exercise, you're able to think more clearly, and you usually have more energy, and you usually reduce stress, and you maintain a higher quality of life. A lot of modern neurology is built on these principles that Roger Sperry worked on in this area. Now, there are two different types of movement sense. There's positive sense and negative sense. Now, positive movement sense is also it's known as proprioception, and negative damaging movement sense is called nociception. Now, when your brain gets constantly stimulated with positive movement sense, it creates balance in the nervous system and in the body. And we call that homeostasis. You have energy, you think clearly, you cope with stress better, your emotions are balanced, and more importantly, your body systems are really kept functioning appropriately and optimally. When your brain receives lots and lots of these positive signals from your body, it gets charged with these hundreds of millions of signals, and it has information to process. And your brain can form a picture of what your body is going through at any given moment. Now, on the other hand, what if your body sends up large amounts of negative signals? Well, it causes the central nervous system to go into a protective mode because it gets all stressed out. We call that protective mode fight or flight. And you've heard of that probably in high school science class. Now, the easiest way to describe it is like noise. Your brain receives a bunch of noise signals when you get injured, or your muscles and joints are all immobilized for some reason. It's like nails on the chalkboard to your brain, or it's like blasting heavy metal music when you're trying to read. Now, the problem is that negative signals are a trigger for your brain to get stressed out. When your brain receives stressful negative signals from your body, it triggers a stress response through something called the HPA axis, or the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Now, I don't have time in this video to outline how all of that works, but it is a well understood and well documented phenomenon that ultimately pushes your body and brain into that state called fight or flight. The effects of too much nociception include increased adrenaline and cortisol levels and decreased digestive and immune function, among other things. Now, a little known fact is that 60% of all the movement sense in your whole body comes from your spine. And more than half of that comes from just the top 3 bones in your neck. So movement in your spine, and specifically in your neck, is extremely important in your brain's impression of the world. So how does this apply to you? What does this mean? Well, let's say that when you were 16 years old, you were in a car accident, or you played football, or you fell out of a tree or something. The most susceptible areas of the spine are in the lower back and in the neck. Now, if you sustain a neck injury and never properly rehabilitate it, your spine is going to remain in an injured state where one or more vertebrae are stuck out of place, which we call a subluxation. And that's going to happen for as long as it's injured and stuck. In addition to that, your brain is receiving tons and tons of negative signals every day for many, many years, ever since the injury. That means your body and your nervous system get stuck in a chronic long-term stress response. Now, for adults, well, that means chronic tightness in the neck and shoulders, and pain between the shoulder blades and the lower back, and sciatica, and a bunch of other problems. You wake up with a crick in your neck or whatever. Exercise gets more difficult. The metabolism slows down. The autonomic, or your organ systems of your body, function at lower capacity. Now, for kids, it's a whole different ballgame. Research that was published just a few months ago in November 2005, just about 7 months before I'm recording this right now, shows that 91% of all babies born in normal births have injuries in at least one vertebra in the neck. And in addition to that, 94% of all babies have injuries in at least one lumbar vertebra. So what does chronic stress response look like in babies and little kids? Well, that's part of the whole perfect storm principle that we talk about a lot in our office. Increased stress response from nociception has different effects on small developing brains than on adult brains and fully developed brains. So chronic fight or flight response in kids affects higher brain functions. Things like complex cognitive behavior and personality expression and decision making and moderating social behaviors, all the prefrontal cortex kind of stuff in the top highest parts of the brain. So they can develop symptoms like attention deficit or hyperactivity or sensory processing issues or anxiety or depression or opposition or autism spectrum symptoms, and really a host of other symptoms that traditionally require medications and other therapies to manage. Now, we commonly see improvements every single day in kids, both young and old, with these symptoms through rehabilitation of their injuries and stimulating the positive proprioception sense through adjustments. So you see, chiropractic is not really something necessarily to be believed in or not. We're way past that now. Chiropractic is the science of removing the negative movement sense and stimulating powerful, positive proprioception sense so that your nervous system can flourish and it can generate power and keep your body healthy. Now, I hope that all makes sense to you. We blew through it kind of fast. Watch it again if you need to. Really, if you have questions or concerns, visit the Perfect Storm page on the website, or even better yet, just give us a call and come on in and chat with me, and we'll figure out what's best for you and your family. Thanks for watching.